The split in the rock is barely wide enough for a girl to turn sideways. On one side, cracked earth, white sky, and a silence that feels like a held breath before a long cry. On the other side, something breathes back. Cool air, the faint smell of water, two pairs of hands pressed flat against red stone. Spring comes late to the high desert and leaves before anyone is ready. May Rowan learned that the year her mother died, how quickly the good things go, how long the dry season lasts after. She is 18 years old, and she has lived beside her twin sister Willa every day of those years. The land teaches you what it means to lose something. May has decided she will not lose Willa. The Rowan homestead sits 3 miles south of Red Hollow Gap, where the canyon breaks open into a flat pan of clay and scrub. Their father, Arden Rowan, filed the claim 8 years ago when the territory still felt like possibility. He was a good man with a strong back and a wife who knew how to make a hard place feel like home. That wife, Ruth, died of fever when the girls were 14, and Arden has been doing the arithmetic of survival ever since. The homestead shows it. The kitchen garden yielded nothing but stunted beans last summer. The well dropped 6 inches between June and August. 2 of the 4 goats are gone, 1 taken by a coyote, 1 traded for lamp oil. What remains is a 1-room adobe structure with a packed dirt floor, a wagon with a cracked axle leaning against the fence post, and a man who sits longer each evening watching the western ridge like it owes him something. May and Willa hold the place together by habit and love. They repair the adobe after every hard rain, carry water from the lower spring in the canyon mouth, tend the surviving goats, and cook from stores that are always thinner than they should be. They do these things side by side, finishing each other's sentences the way twins do, moving through the small house and the hard yard in a rhythm built over 18 years of shared mornings. They are not identical in face or manner. May is the steadier one, quiet in her thinking, precise in her hands. She learned to set seed by depth and soil temperature from a pamphlet she traded an afternoon's labor for at the dry goods in Red Hollow. Willa is quicker to laugh, quicker to worry, and quicker to act when acting is needed. And between them, there is a language made of half-glances and the particular way one will rest a hand on the other's arm when words run short. Arden watches his daughters with a grief he cannot name. He sees Ruth in both of them, and it makes the arithmetic harder. On a Thursday in late April, a letter arrives with the weekly supply rider. Arden reads it twice at the table, folds it once, and sets it beside the salt dish. He does not speak until supper, and when he does, his voice carries the careful flatness of a man who has already decided something he does not want to defend. He has written to 2 families. The aldermans in Santa Fe have agreed to take May on as a household helper through the harvest season and likely beyond. The Fenwick widow in Taos wants Willa for the same arrangement. Both positions include board and a small wage. Both are respectable. Both are 3 days apart by stage. He says he sees no other way. May and Willa sit very still on opposite sides of the table. That night, the sisters lie awake on their shared pallet, the adobe still holding the day's heat in its walls. Outside, a nighthawk calls twice and goes quiet. Willa speaks first, low and even. He means it. He does, May says. Santa Fe and Taos. Yes. Willa turns onto her side. In the dark, May can make out only the shape of her, the braid over one shoulder, the angle of her jaw. We could go, Willa says. Save the wages, come back in a year. A year, or 2. May stares at the ceiling. The adobe is cool now and smells of clay and the dried herbs Willa hung last autumn in the corner. Sage, mostly, and their mother always kept sage. He'd sell the claim by then, May says, or lose it, and we'd be, what? Two hired girls in other people's houses, in other people's towns, sending coin home to a man who won't be on this land anymore. Willa is quiet. She knows it's true. There's the canyon, May says. Willa sits up. May has been thinking about it since the moment she went still at supper. Everyone who has lived near Red Hollow Gap knows the canyon runs north a good 3 miles before it pinches into impassable narrows. No one goes beyond the narrows because there is no point. The wall's close to nothing, or so it appears. But May walked out alone last October when she needed to think after a poor harvest, and she stood at that pinch point and felt something that stopped her mid-step. Cool air, moving, damp at the edge of it. There's something past those narrows, May says. I've thought about it for months. The air doesn't lie about water. We don't know what's there. We don't know what's in Santa Fe either. Willa pulls her braid over the other shoulder and thinks. Papa would come looking. He would, May agrees. That's why we'd need to be settled before anyone thought to search, and why we'd need to leave before he wakes. A long silence. Then Willa says, What do we take? May has already made the list in her head. She tells it quietly, item by item, into the dark. They rise 2 hours before first light. May takes the seed tin from the top shelf where she put it after last year's harvest. Squash, bean, and a folded paper of herb seed she has been saving since March. Willa takes the small iron pot, the wool blanket, the water skin, and the hand tool with the curved blade they use for root work. May adds the paring knife, a coil of rope, and the pamphlet on soil and seed she has carried for 2 years. They leave no note because there are no words that would make it easier. They close the door gently behind them. What they carry with them is not only seed and rope. They carry 4 years of learning to hold each other up after their mother died, of deciding together which goat to sell and which to keep, of one sitting with the other through a bad fever and a bad season. They carry the knowledge that they have never made a hard thing easy by making it alone. The journey ahead is not only about the canyon or the homestead they do not yet know they will build. It is about a partnership already fully formed between them. The desert before dawn has a quality the midday sun burns away completely, a blue-gray softness at the edges of things, a coolness that almost feels like forgiveness. May leads and Willa follows, and then Willa leads and May follows, as they have always done. The trail into the canyon mouth is familiar for the first mile, packed by the goats and their own feet over years of water carrying. After that, it becomes stranger. Red canyon walls rise on either side, layered like pages pressed together, and then tilted by some enormous and long-ago force. The sisters walk in the shadow of them, their footsteps quiet on the sandy floor. The pre-dawn birds begin, a mourning dove first, then a cactus wren somewhere above. May marks direction by the brightening to the east, keeping it on her left, moving north, and by the time full light opens overhead, they are past the stretch of canyon they know well. The walls have narrowed some but not closed. The floor is still passable, interrupted here and there by old flood deposits, gravel bars, drifts of red sand piled against the inner curve of each bend. Where water has run, even months ago, the ground is slightly darker and the footing firmer. May watches all of it. You're reading the ground again, Willa says. The gravel bars point upstream. Water came from the north. You got that from the pamphlet. The pamphlet got it from someone who knew. Willa smiles and adjusts the iron pot on her back. They stop at mid-morning in a wide spot where an overhang of rock throws shade and sit to drink sparingly from the water skin. The overhang has a smoke-dark ceiling. Someone sheltered here once, long ago. Below the soot line, pressed into the soft stone, are the faint shapes of hands. Small ones. May traces the outline of one without touching it. How old? Willa says. Old, May says. Old as the canyon remembers. They rest 10 minutes and move on. The canyon bends twice more, and at the second bend, the walls come close enough that they must walk single file. The light above is a bright slot, the floor between the walls packed and cool. And there, May stops walking without deciding to stop. The air changes. It comes from ahead, from the narrowing, and it is unmistakable. Not cold, not exactly, but cooler than the air they have been walking through all morning. And underneath the mineral dryness of the canyon there is something else, something green and wet at the edge of it, the suggestion of growing things. Willa steps up beside her, close. They stand together, looking at the narrow passage ahead. The walls press in to within 2 feet of each other, maybe less. The slot runs perhaps 30 feet before it bends and opens, or closes. There is no telling from here. That's it, May says. It's close. Close enough to turn sideways. Willa reaches out and touches the rock face, which is faintly cool even in the morning light. What if it just ends? What if it's a pocket in the stone and there's nothing beyond? Then we come back out. And if we can't? The walls lean out at the base, May says, crouching briefly to look. There's more room below than above. If we keep low, we can always come back. Willa nods slowly. Me first. I thought I was first. I'm faster in tight spaces. I have less shoulder. This is not quite true, but May does not argue. She watches Willa set the pot and blanket down, take only the water skin, and turn sideways to press into the slot. The red rock closes around her sister like a hand. May watches the top of Willa's head moving along the slot, disappearing around the bend, and then silence. Long enough that May's hands go still at her sides. Then Willa's voice comes back through the stone, carried and changed by the rock into something that sounds like it comes from underwater. May, she says. Oh, May. May goes through fast, turning sideways and pressing herself along the cool rock face, arms ahead of her, the seed tin tucked against her chest. The slot is tight at the shoulders but passable, and the floor is smooth and slightly damp. She rounds the bend and the rock opens, first to 3 feet wide, then 4. Then she steps out of the narrows entirely and stops. The canyon opens into a roughly oval space, perhaps 200 feet long and half that across, enclosed on all sides by walls of red and orange sandstone rising 60 feet or more. The walls lean inward at the top, creating a space that is half sheltered from the direct overhead sun and fully sheltered from the wind. The light that reaches the floor comes bounced and filtered from the upper walls, amber-tinted and soft. And on the floor of the space, green. Not the pale, exhausted green of desert scrub, but a dense, layered, actual green. Long grass along the lowest depression, patches of something broad-leafed and low against the north wall, a scatter of flowering plants May does not immediately recognize. And threading through all of it, trickling along a groove worn deep in the stone over centuries, a thin, continuous run of water. It comes from a crack in the north wall 8 feet up, falls in a soft curtain to a natural basin in the rock below, and then runs south through the grass, sinking finally into the porous floor near the far wall. The smell is the smell of water and living soil, and something mineral underneath, faintly sulphurous, the signature of mineral spring water. May knows the smell from a description in the pamphlet. Mineral water, it said, deposits trace minerals in the soil it passes through. unusual fertility, unusual growth. Willa is standing in the middle of it, holding both hands out at her sides as though she is afraid that moving them will break something. "It's real," she says. "It's real," May confirms, and they spend the whole of that afternoon learning the space the way you learn a new room, by walking it, crouching at its edges, pressing a palm to its walls. The spring in the north wall is steady and clean. May tastes it cautiously and finds it slightly warm and flat, the mineral taste mild. The basin beneath catches perhaps 3 gallons and overflows southward. The soil in the lowest depression, where the water runs, is dark and dense, and when May digs a finger into it, the moisture holds 2 inches down. She makes herself be slow and practical. She notes the angle of available light. The gap overhead runs roughly east to west, so the floor gets direct sun only in the middle hours of the day, filtered light the rest of the time. Protected from frost, she thinks, by the thermal mass of the surrounding stone. The north wall is shaded all morning. The south wall catches the afternoon sun and holds its heat. They set up a camp against the east wall, where a ledge of rock creates a natural windbreak and a flat area of packed stone where they can lay the blanket. Willa gathers dried grass from the edges of the wet depression for padding. May coils the rope and sets the seed tin in a niche in the wall, out of direct sun. By evening, they are sitting cross-legged on the blanket, eating dried cornmeal from the tin May packed, drinking spring water from the pot, listening to the sound of the water in the basin, which is constant and small and very clean. "No one knows this is here," Willa says. "No one. Not even Papa. He never walked this far." Willa is quiet for a while. Above them, the narrow gap of sky has turned the color of a coal ember, in deep orange fading toward violet. The walls hold the last light long after the floor has gone to shadow. A single bat crosses the overhead gap, hunting. "We'll have to be careful," Willa says. "If someone found the slot, they'd have to know to feel for the air," May says, "and they'd have to want to go through." Willa nods. "We'll be the ones who want to." On the third morning, May lays the seed tin open on the flat stone and counts every packet: squash, bean, herb. 3 varieties of each, small quantities, enough to start but not enough to waste. She also counts what the garden gives them freely. The broad-leafed plants along the north wall turn out to be wild onion. The long grass is edible at its base, young and tender. The flowering plants Willa identifies as a variety of mineral cress she has seen near springs. They are not just hiding. They are gardening. They have the beginning of a home. May puts the first seeds in the ground before noon. The weeks that follow are the fullest work of their lives. There is no idleness possible in a hidden canyon with 2 people and a winter to prepare for, and May and Willa fill every hour between rising and sleeping with the labor of making the space into a place that can hold them. May designs the water system first, because without it, everything else fails. The spring basin overflows at a fixed point along its southern rim. She uses the curved hand tool to deepen the overflow channel 6 inches, then lines it with flat stones gathered from the canyon floor, thin red slabs that fit together edge to edge with only slight trimming. The channel runs 14 feet south to a second depression she has dug by hand, packed with clay from the north wall base, tamped firm, allowed to dry 2 days, and then filled. The second basin holds water for 4 hours before it seeps away, which is enough time to draw from it for cooking and to water the planted beds without touching the primary spring. The beds take 3 days to build. The canyon floor slopes gently from north to south, and May uses this gradient to create 3 terraced levels. each one a foot lower than the last, each edge reinforced with a row of flat stones, the interior filled with a mix of canyon floor soil and the dark mineral-fed soil she carries by the iron pot from the wet depression. She plants the squash seed on the lowest terrace closest to the water channel, the bean on the middle level, the herbs in the sunniest patch of the upper terrace, where the south wall's reflected afternoon heat can warm the soil through cool nights. Willa handles the living quarters with the same systematic care. She finds a deep, horizontal niche in the east wall, 6 feet wide and 3 feet deep at head height, and spends 2 mornings filling it with flat stones and dried grass to create a sleeping shelf that keeps them off the cold floor. Below the shelf, she builds a low windbreak from stacked loose stone, closing off the lower half of the niche opening and creating a chamber that holds body warmth through the night. She hangs the wool blanket as a curtain during the day and draws it across the opening at dusk. They do not speak often while they work. They have never needed to fill silence with words, and the canyon seems to ask for quiet anyway. There is something chapel-like about it, something that makes raised voices feel out of place. They communicate in the shorthand of long partnership, a raised chin toward a problem, a hand held flat, meaning wait, a brief press of the shoulder meaning I see it too. But the canyon is also beginning to ask harder questions. Their cornmeal is nearly gone by the end of the 2nd week. The wild onion and mineral cress are edible but thin nourishment. The squash will not be ready for harvest for at least 60 days. May does the arithmetic at night and it comes up short. There is also the matter of Arden. They have not spoken about him directly, but he is present in every calculation, in the question of whether he will search the canyon, whether anyone in Red Hollow will mention to him that the Narrows are sometimes passable in a dry year. May does not believe he would come as far as the Narrows on his own. He is not a man who walks 3 miles into a canyon on a speculation. But she is not certain, and uncertainty is its own kind of weight. In the 3rd week, 2 things happen that change the shape of what they are building. The first is that Willa finds the 2nd spring. She has been exploring the base of the north wall, moving methodically along it, looking for additional storage niches, when she notices a section of stone darker than the surrounding rock. Wet dark, not shadow dark. She presses her palm to it and feels the faint resistance of water behind stone, the way a palm against a cold pipe feels the water moving inside. She traces the wet patch upward and left until she finds its source, a hairline crack in the wall 3 inches wide, from which, if she positions her face close, and she can feel a distinct exhale of cool, moist air and see, just barely, the shine of moving water an arm's length back in the stone. She does not try to enlarge the crack. Instead, she does what May would do. She watches it for 2 days at different hours, noting what runs from it, and discovers that twice daily, once in the morning and once in the late afternoon, a thin trickle of water moves along the dark section of wall and drops to the floor below, where it has created, over years uncounted, a small shelf of mineral deposit the color of old cream. The mineral shelf is 6 inches wide, perfectly level, and dry between flows. May stares at it for a long time when Willa shows her. Shelving, May says. It made us a shelf. We could use it to cure the mineral cress, Willa says. Lay it flat on the deposit to dry in the morning airflow from the crack. This is, May thinks, the most practical, beautiful thing she has heard in weeks. The second thing that happens is harder. On the 22nd day, May climbs to the top of the canyon wall. She has been thinking about it since the 2nd week, whether it is possible, whether the handholds are there. She finds a spot on the east wall where centuries of water seepage have cut horizontal ledges into the sandstone at roughly even intervals, a natural ladder of sorts. She goes up in the early morning while the stone is still cool, the seed tin left at the base, only herself and her careful hands. The view from the top is the desert she grew up in. To the south, she can see the flat pan of clay and scrub, and at its far edge, the low shape of the homestead, a smoke from the chimney. Arden is there. She sits on the rim of the canyon wall for a long time and looks at that smoke. He is not a bad man. He is a tired man who believed he was solving a problem. He has probably grieved their leaving in the way he grieves everything. Quietly, over the stove, in the direction of the western ridge. He has probably also done what she feared, received word from the Alderman family and the Fenwick widow that his daughters never arrived. He will know by now that they did not go where he sent them. He will not know where they went. She climbs back down and finds Willa at the water channel, clearing a small stone that has shifted and partially blocked the flow. Willa looks up. May says, "He knows we're gone. We always knew he would. He'll grieve it." Willa sits back on her heels. He already was grieving. He was grieving us before we left. May does not have an answer to that because it is true. She picks up a flat stone and fits it into the channel beside Willa's hands. A week of true hunger follows. The cress and onion are not enough. The squash vines are climbing but weeks from fruit. May measures what remains in the tin and understands that by the end of the week they will be without grain. She says nothing to Willa, but Willa sees it anyway. Sees the way May does the arithmetic at mealtimes, the way she sets her own portion smaller. On the 7th morning of that week, Willa asks May to tell her the numbers. May tells them. Willa is quiet for a moment. Then she says, "Someone has to go out." That night is the hardest of the canyon. They sit together on the sleeping shelf with the blanket over both their shoulders and do not immediately speak, because the thing that must be said is that one of them will go back through the slot and into the desert and go as far as Red Hollow or the homestead, and that person will be seen, and being seen means the canyon may be known. The secrecy that has kept them safe and separate and together is the thing that may now cost them. May thinks about her mother, who never had the luxury of keeping anything back for herself, who spent every year of her life on the homestead giving it all to the land and the family and the dry season, who taught May that the practical thing and the loving thing are usually the same thing if you are willing to think hard enough. Willa puts her head on May's shoulder. "We built something real," Willa says, "whatever happens." "Nothing happens to the canyon," May says. "It was here before us. But we made it home." "We did." A long silence. Above the gap, stars appear one at a time in the deepening dark. "I'll go," May says. "I know the canyon mouth. I know the trail." Willa lifts her head. "We go together," she says. "We always go together." It is Willa who thinks of it in the dark, and the simplicity of it is enough to make them both go quiet. They do not need to choose between secrecy and survival. They need to go to Arden, not as runaways returning, not as daughters surrendering, but as daughters who have found something worth showing him, something that changes the arithmetic entirely. The canyon is not their hiding place. It is their evidence, their proof. They will bring their father through the slot and let the garden speak. They go through the narrows before first light, May leading this time, and emerge into the outer canyon with the desert ahead and the low, golden beginning of sunrise painting the upper walls copper. They walk south together, out of the canyon mouth, across the flat pan, and up to the door of the homestead as the sun clears the eastern ridge. Arden is already outside. He is standing at the fence post with a tin cup in his hand, looking south the way he looks at the western ridge, like he is waiting for something the distance owes him. When he sees them, he goes still for a full 3 seconds before he sets the cup on the fence post with great care, as if he is afraid that any sudden movement will dissolve what he is seeing. May speaks first. "Papa." He crosses the yard in 8 steps and puts both arms around both of them and holds on. He does not speak. His shoulders move once, briefly, and that is all he allows himself. May feels Willa's hand find hers behind his back, and she squeezes. When he steps back, his face is composed again, with an effort that costs him something visible. He looks at them, both of them, back and forth, and what comes out of him first is not anger or relief, but the sentence of a man trying very hard to be practical. "The Aldermans wrote, the Fenwicks wrote." "Yes," May says. "You never went." "No." "Where?" It comes out flat, not quite a question. "The canyon," May says. "North, past the Narrows." He blinks. "The Narrows close to nothing." "They close to 2 feet," May says, "wide enough to turn sideways." A silence. A nighthawk calls somewhere over the mesa. Arden picks up his tin cup and holds it in both hands and looks at his daughters and waits. "We want to show you something," Willa says. They give him 10 minutes to bank the stove and put on his boots. He does not ask questions on the walk north, which is the most trust May has ever seen him offer. He walks between them through the canyon mouth, along the increasingly narrow corridor of red wall, past the overhang with the handprints, into the single-file stretch where the walls press close. He stops when the slot comes into view. He looks at it, then at May. "You went through that." "We did." He turns sideways without another word and follows them in. The cool air comes first. May watches his face as he rounds the bend inside the slot and the space opens, watches the moment his eyes adjust, and he understands what he is seeing. She has been inside the canyon for 23 days, and she is still not entirely accustomed to it. She cannot imagine what it is to see it for the first time. Arden walks out of the Narrows and into the garden and stops in the middle of it with both hands at his sides, the way Willa stood on the first day, as if stillness is the only adequate response. The squash vines have climbed the trellis of rope May strung between 2 rock protrusions. The bean plants are 8 inches tall and dark green, the morning light catching their leaves from the gap above. The herb terrace smells of sage and something sharper, the mineral cress dried on the stone shelf and stored in the niche. Along the north wall, the water runs from the spring crack into the basin and overflows along the lined channel, quiet and continuous. The sleeping shelf with its blanket curtain is tidy against the east wall. The whole space smells like water and growing things and warm stone. Arden looks at the terraced beds. He crouches and picks up a pinch of the soil and rubs it between his fingers and looks at May. "Mineral spring," May says. "It runs from a crack in the north wall. It's fed the soil here for a long time. The pamphlet on mineral spring agriculture says the mineral deposits increase water retention and nitrogen availability." He looks at the channel, tracing it from the basin to the terraces. He looks at the sleeping niche. He looks at the rope trellis. "You built all of this." "In 3 weeks," Willa says. He stands up slowly. He turns a full circle, looking at everything, the walls, the light, the bat niches in the upper rock where each evening a dozen small bats emerge to hunt, the pale mineral shelf where the cress dries, the stacked stone windbreak. "No one knows this is here," he says. "No one," May says. The air from the slot doesn't carry far. You have to walk almost up to it before you feel it. Arden is quiet for a long time. A very long time. The kind that May has learned to let settle rather than interrupt. The spring trickles. A finch appears at the top of the gap and disappears. Then he says, "I was wrong." It is 4 words. They cost him everything, and he says them straight and flat and true. "You were tired," May says. "I was wrong," he says again, because he will not let her soften it. "I was going to split you in half and send you to strangers, and you—" He stops, looks at the terraces. "You built a farm." "We started one," Willa says. "We need more seed. We need to know if the claim can be filed on land inside a canyon like this. May thought you might know." He looks at her, and something rearranges itself in his face. The arithmetic man recedes. The father of 2 capable daughters arrives, and May can see him seeing them, not as a problem he solved incorrectly, but as the people who have been solving things alongside him all along. "I might know," he says, "or I can find out." He picks up the tin cup he carried all the way from the homestead without noticing, sets it on the flat stone beside the seed tin, and sits down. "Show me," he says, "from the beginning." And they do. Arse. By mid-morning, the 3 of them are sitting on the sleeping shelf with the mineral cress tea Willa has learned to brew from the dried leaves steeped in spring water. It is warm and faintly bitter, and tastes of the stone it came from. The light through the gap above has reached the middle terraces, and the squash leaves are turning their faces toward it, the way all growing things do, finding the light, leaning into it, asking nothing but the chance to continue. May and Willa sit on either side of their father. He holds his cup in both hands. The canyon breathes around them, cool and quiet, and entirely theirs.